welcome to the podcast today. I really appreciate you taking out the time. We have Colonel Rodney Jackson with us today, who is the Special Troops Battalion commander. He has been the commander for the last 2 years, almost switching out. How's that feel?
It's surreal, right? How fast 2 years can go by.
Yeah, usually you don't really think about it, and then all of a sudden you're like, "What? Where did that go?"
Yeah.
But also want to talk about a couple things today. We're going to dig into your career a little bit, illustrious as it is. We're going to talk about your experiences as a leader, and hopefully give talk about some of the things that you look at when looking at soldiers and stuff like that.
Yes.
But the first thing I want to ask you guys got the division, right? The installation has a new kiosk, a food truck, a food kiosk coming out.
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually, to be honest, the CG is really working hard to modernize the entire food system, right? We go through modernization with a lot of things, right? Tanks, you name it, radios, but also modernizing the way that we do food for our soldiers.
Okay.
I've heard the word more geographically dispersed, right? Fort Riley has been known to have 3 dining facilities. That's Woodside, Cantigny, and Devil's Den. Devil's Den went down and it's now having to be renovated. So that only leaves 2 dining facilities on the installation, and the division is 15,000 soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So what he wants to do is make things more geographically dispersed. So Fast Eddie's, right? You got the cab that's pretty much isolated on their own. So that's going to provide an opportunity for those soldiers to be able to go somewhere closer. Right, and it's in a modernized fashion, right? It'll be in a kiosk. They can go in and do a grab and go, right? But it will be nutritious, right? It's not just garbage. So we'll go for green, and they'll have some good stuff for them to eat as well. And then they don't have to work as hard to go try to find a facility. Try to meet them where they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing with Fast Eddie's, and then building 8044 that'll be opening on the 14th. That'll be a grand opening. It's actually directly across the street from my headquarters, the DSTB.
Okay.
If you go directly across the street next to Long's Gym, that's building 8044. And so you think about all those soldiers that are in the barracks, right? They're on the hill. On the weekend, all you have is Cantigny. Some of them may or may not want to leave their barracks room and go all the way down. Well, hey, now you can just go to this kiosk right here, and it'd be ready, available for you.
And I know a lot of the soldiers know exactly how the hill is set up, right? But like even that is still a ways to get to, even if Devil's Den was open,
right?
It's still a ways to get to the other side of the
Absolutely.
hill. I mean, yeah, hopefully you have a car.
Correct.
It's a little easier, but otherwise it's a longer walk. So having something on that end of the hill is pretty crucial. So you say green food or like healthier food,
right?
Because I think talking about green options as far as a defect goes.
Yeah.
So what are the types of food that they'll have there more specifically as far as like what they'll be able to grab and go?
So the good thing about it is that we have the ability to adjust the menu to whatever we want, as long as it's within the spectrum of through AFES and all these other organizations that we got. So initially off the bat, a lot of it will be, your sandwiches, tuna, those type of things. I think they're even going to provide sushi, things of that nature.
Wow. Okay.
There'll be microwavable dinners, right? They'll have the drinks, all of those things they can get, right? But then the soldiers will have an ability to ask, right? Things that they want to see and things that they believe they would prefer, right? And we have the ability to adjust it. The go for green thing is just us up front making sure that it's nutritious and it's there for soldiers to be able to eat healthy so they can be ready to fight. But the reality is too, it's the soldiers have an ability to shape it a little bit too with their feedback.
So how do they provide that feedback back to either you, whoever runs the kiosk? I would imagine it's you as overall, but how do they get that feedback back to through the food channels to say like, hey, this is great, but can we get more bread options? Can we get more meat options, or however that works?
Yeah, so I have NCO at each facility. And so it'll be 5 to 6 people in each one of those facilities. And that NCO, right, they have, right, the suggestion box.
Okay.
Right, so it's not just about what food we want, how can we make the facility better for
Right,
you,
yeah.
And so we've done a good job up front to try to create a space where there's rooms, a little room set aside, right? They have the whiteboards. We're trying to get them a TV and things in there, So, hey, maybe if I'm just a squad leader or a team leader and I just want to go somewhere real quick with my team, I got the whiteboard. We can kind of talk through some things while we have lunch. All of those type of things, they'll be able to leave us that feedback and we could try to, adjust to help them out.
So obviously this is you just said it, and I was just gonna bring this up. Because obviously we're trying to help soldiers, or the division's trying to help soldiers get more options, get more locations to where they can go. How do we? This is sounding really weird, and I don't mean it any negative way, but how do we convince the soldiers who are sometimes receptive to, or not so receptive to Army meals all the time, to convince them that, hey, this is your opportunity, and we're gonna we get your voice, we're gonna get your voice, and we're gonna get your comments, and we're gonna really make this what you all want it to be. It may not be what you want it to be at the first, because we're just getting started, but how do we work to convince the soldiers that this is for their benefit?
No, that's a good question, right? So, and not to be cliche, I don't know if that's the goal, right? I don't know if the goal is to convince the soldiers to come to a kiosk and get a meal, right? Versus going to Panda or going to Buffalo Wild Wings, right? I believe we created all of those things to give soldiers options. And so I don't know if the goal is necessarily to, persuade a soldier to go to the kiosk versus where they would normally go. The goal is to make sure that we can geographically disperse enough options to where the soldier has things available to them so they're not limited, right? So,
that makes sense, yeah.
Maybe I do go to Panda 2 to 3 times out of the week, but the one day I had to be at the motor pool in 30 minutes, right? It's conveniently placed right here for me to go get a meal. It's going to be healthy and I can stay in the fight. So I'm not saying that it's not a thing, but I don't know if it's the primary focus.
No, that's understood. So, and then when we're looking at the availability of the kiosk, or this new kiosk itself, and that's right next door to Fairleigh Clinic as well, right? Okay. What is the availability for that? What are the hours looking like? Are they going to be same as a DFAC, or are they going to be slightly different?
So slightly different, right? So our kiosk hours usually run from 08 to 1400. And we're also going to have that particular one open on the weekends.
Oh, okay.
So that's something, right? So, hey, I wake up on the weekend. I don't want to have to walk all the way down to Cantigny. I could actually just go right to my barracks room, grab something, and be good to go. So 08 to 1400 is what we're trying to do right now. And, talking to the CG yesterday, he also like to have that available on the weekends. And so we're going to execute.
So with that comes obviously the people that work in there and support it, right? So where are those soldiers coming from? Are those just I know every unit kind of supports a DFAC, but are those just regular cooks showing up, or is there other people?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that, right? And so we might be creeping into some DSTB problems right now, right?
Well, they're unsung heroes that work at those DFACs.
And I got it, right? Everybody is hard pressed and nothing's at rest, right? I get it. But 511th, my field feeding quartermaster company is generally, right, we have the Woodside dining facility. We have the kiosk over here on Main Post.
Right.
And we'll have Fast Eddie's as well as, 8044. So there's some talk about, BMM maybe potentially supporting that, but it's coming out of the DSTB's field feeding.
Right now. Okay.
Field feeding company.
Well, I was just, I know they may not hear it enough, but I know those soldiers that work on those DFACs are highly appreciated. They're the first ones up, always work on the weekends. It's, they probably, I don't know if they hear it enough, but they're highly appreciated.
So I tell you, I've had a few jobs where I thought I was working hard, right? But you hit the nail on the head, right? So as a commander, that is one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, right? That field feeding company. When you talk about commitment, right? Commitment. And the stories could go on and on, right? Like when we went through Snowmageddon,
right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And soldiers couldn't even get out the barracks, but Woodside was open.
Right.
So those soldiers got in a snowplow.
Truly living the values of the USPS.
Yeah, right. So we're gonna, and I commend the CG for that. We're gonna provide, options to eat to soldiers on the Big Red One, but. That's a good point, right? Hey, on the weekends when we're all enjoying ourselves, Cantigny and Woodside is open, right? Yeah. And those soldiers, but I used to worry about that, but they embrace it. They understand that it's some of the challenges that come with their MOS, right? So, I try I make my kids on the weekends. Some days we'll go in there and eat breakfast, or we'll eat their brunch, right? To try to at least have a presence and show them that we do appreciate what they do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And now, speaking of your time in command, obviously we've spent a lot of time talking about the field feeding company so far, but the STB has a bunch of unique, kind of like unique roles and unique missions that you do. Elements deploy a lot. Elements support the entire installation, support the entire whatever 1ID's mission is across the world. And as we touched upon at the beginning, you're wrapping up your time here.
Right.
But I want you to kind of like think back to 2 years ago when you took the guide on, and you realized like the STB job is for real. What were some of the things that you kind of thought through at the beginning of I really need to figure out what this unit does, or were you like, I know exactly what this does and I'm ready to go?
So to be honest, right, that's interesting. If I think back to me coming to the Big Red One, it actually was even before that. It was 3 years.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So
That's right.
I was at my current job that I had at the time, and ironically, I've never had this happen to me before, but I get a phone call directly from General Sims, and he says, hey, Colonel Jackson, what do you think of Kansas? And I'm like, sir, I don't know. I haven't ever thought about it.
Maybe you're talking to Geo here, so
so obviously, right? You want to keep it together. I was like, sir, I hadn't thought about it. Dimitri and I are anticipating to see what comes out on this command list, and so we'll see what happens. And ironically, he's like, I don't know about that. He's like, we'll get you down here. I got a job I want you to do. You'll command something. So I was like,
okay.
Oh, man, I made command list, right? But he's like, I need you to do something for me first. You're going to come down here and you're going to take over OVW.
Okay.
At the time, it was Operation Victory Wellness, and so I was getting all spud up about that because that was a big thing, right? It's still a big thing, but, we were still trying to, really grow that program at the time. And so when I came here, hey, you're going to take over Operation Victory Wellness, I was excited. I believed in the mission, right? Taking care of soldiers, making sure that they're spiritually, mentally fit, right? That's a good thing. And then when I got here, the division headquarters was forward.
Oh,
and so,
he forgot to tell you that part.
And he was no longer in command. General Meyer was in command.
Right.
And then there was a Lieutenant Colonel Atkins, who was the Division G3.
Okay.
He retired. And so it was me and Colonel Clueless, the only two lieutenant colonels back, and they were like, hey, you're going to be the G3.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, of course. That's exactly what I want to do, right? I signed up for
this.
There's
a dotted line somewhere I forgot to sign?
So for a while there, myself, Colonel Clueless, General Nell was back. I actually was the Division G3, and so it was the biggest blessing in disguise because I got to see what every brigade was doing. I got to meet all the garrison individuals. I got to meet everybody on Fort
It kind of
Riley.
forces you to do things that you probably, you would have done eventually. But
correct. And Division G3, let me tell you, is not.
I don't even want to pretend.
Correct. So I initially didn't even have time to put thought into being a DSTB commander. And then so the division comes back, of course, and then Colonel Kane takes over. And then I go back to OVW, and so I could kind of shift my focus. And most people know I'm AG.
Yeah.
Right. When you look at me, you don't assume that, right?
Nope.
But I'm AG by trade, so shields up.
Good shout out.
But I get over to the DSTB, and that's like you want to think logistics, right? Because everybody, when they think of the DSB, they naturally think logistics. That's not really what we are, right? Now, understand, I know the DSSB you would consider, in my opinion, the unit of action for the DSB. I see us as the enablers. And so we come equipped with the field feeding team, right? What's a field feeding team? What's an MKT, right? What's an assault kitchen, right? And so we do that, and then, no one's even mentioning this garrison mission that we do also. And then you got the 267 signal company, hey, we're going to put up an STT or an heat close. Or,
hey, what is a heat close?
Upper TI and lower TI. Like, hey, what are we talking about right now? So, steep learning curve. Then obviously I'm comfortable with 258, the HR company. And then you have the HAC, which is really ironic, right? Because that's the brigade headquarters. So technically it's a company, but it's
Right.
still my brigade commander,
Yep.
right? So it gets interesting.
Letting him
And-
know that he's 350-1 training is due, sir.
Correct. You're finding a HAC commander that's bold enough to work between me and the brigade
Oh
commander.
wow, yeah, I didn't even think about it like
Yeah.
that. That's man.
So I'm
Poor
their
soul.
boss, but they got another, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you throw in the DMRC, and we're a very eclectic organization.
Right. Yeah.
And, we haven't even discussed the medics yet, right? So, no, great organization. I couldn't have asked to be in a more diverse special unit.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest thing ever.
I think that's probably, I'm going to speak from my experience here, but I'm going to pretend that everyone kind of shares what I go through, which is you think, we look at the BCTs, and obviously they are our units of action. And so and they take a lot of resources. They're the Army's, they're like the fist for the division, right? So they get a lot, they need a lot, obviously, but they're simple organizations. Like both of them are replicas of each other, as far as that goes. And I'll throw Divardi, as far as a brigade, like they have a bunch of pieces under them as well.
Yes.
But for one battalion that you just named like 4 different companies,
Right.
and they're all different specialties. So it's not like there are 4 different companies, but it's all infantrymen, or if it's all armor folks, or a mix of the two in the way we would fight today. But it's very special MOSs that have to go fill those roles. That means very special career paths for those soldiers. How do you and your sergeant major and your first sergeants and commanders have a unique challenge of, I guess, managing those careers. And you're an AG person, so perfect. An AG person, you manage careers all the or you help manage careers all the time. Like you're the right person to go, but there's a level of detail there. So how do you really help? Maybe this is a simpler question that I'm thinking about it in my head. But how do you really help those soldiers like understand, like, hey, this is your career path. We're gonna get you on it, and we're gonna kind of help you focus on what you need to accomplish.
No, I think I understand exactly where you're going with that, right? What that big of a spectrum, right? How do I become, technically proficiently sound enough to know how to keep them in their career path so they can continue to progress?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It's interesting. We just talked about 4 companies. In all honesty, though, right, you got 515th, 595th, 41st, and the new MRBC, the bridging company, that's under us as well. Right? So we didn't discuss that.
I wasn't even going to mention those.
So in theory, the DSCB has 8 companies that we kind of, Fort Riley is responsible for. And how do we help those individuals, right, progress? I open every speech that I have to give since I've been in command that, I'm a proud Big Red 1 soldier, proudly serving in the most deployed organization in the division.
Right, yeah.
A lot of people, whether they like that statement or whether they don't like that statement, they haven't been able to prove it wrong yet, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the reality is, I think the way I help them, and it goes to what General Rohn talks about, being engaged leader. And so what does that do? So by being an engaged leader, when I go out and 267 is talking to me about the night fielding and the LCN and the MCN and 28 ports, or this is upper TI, lower TI, or whatever.
This is way over my head.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is connectivity. So when the RCP sets up, how do we get them that internet capability, upper TI, right, and the whole 9 yards? By being engaged, a lot of times the soldiers are gonna teach me what it is, right? You know how it is, right? So as a leader, whether you divulge it or not, right, you're learning from your troops too. So when I go out there and they're like, hey, sir, this is an STT, right, that's going to shoot a beam out into outer space. And then when you see this squiggly line on the laptop, that means that we're ready to give internet and I got to run cable. And you're like, oh, man, that sounds good.
Of course you do.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I've been in the Army long enough.
Exactly. And so you do that long enough, right, you start to learn that skill set.
Yeah.
And you start to learn that job. But then you also start to identify those soldiers that are very tactically, technically sound and proficient, because they're always there. And they're always very quick to tell you about their piece of equipment and how they're going to get it up and how they're going to run it. And I think the more engaged you are, the more you get to learn about all the different MOSs and skill sets.
So now you can, I would imagine, not only can you can't drop a bridge yet because they're still new.
Yeah, but you
can operate the MKT as well as plug internet into that MKT.
Hey,
and then be able to process actions and awards with that internet
All
out
of
of
it.
the MKT.
All of it,
Okay.
right? So hey,
So-
we go around the spectrum. We can set up an LCN, MCN. I know the STT needs to be out there. I'm tracking that the retrans teams say that they can do communication at 40 kilometers, but it's actually 32, right?
I could call their bluff.
Right? AG's
All
too
right,
easy, right?
What angle? Okay, what angle's STT or what? Where's that got to be pointed at?
I
you
leave
know?
that to the experts.
Okay, we're almost there. We'll
yeah.
check on learning.
No, I leave that to the experts.
So, like you said, I know you're AG. I've heard a little bit about your story, and the uniqueness of it. And I mean that as I have a very boring story. I was a PL and an XO as an armor officer. Then I was a battalion S1, brigade S1. I did all the jobs, right? But there's that because that's a traditional glide path as far as my career path and what I was supposed to do. But yours has been a little bit more unique, and so soldiers are kind of told, and we've even had a couple previous guests talk about this as well. But what is your can you just kind of elaborate on what that is? Because I think a lot of soldiers are always kind of concerned and worried: am I doing the right things? Am I doing the right jobs? And now that we have a marketplace, how do I because the enlisted manning cycles are essentially kind of a marketplace, not as much as the officer side, but still they get it more of a choice of what they want to go do.
Right.
Do you have to follow? Is it good to follow the book laden path, to make sure success, or how did Because obviously you still got chosen for command.
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through what your background was and what you've done?
Oh man, it's wild, right? So you have me go back down memory lane, and I'll tell you. So I started off. It's interesting. We got engineers in our company. I started off as an enlisted engineer.
Okay.
Right. So when I go, I know pin my castle.
So you could drop the bridge.
Right?
That was my bad. I spoke too soon.
So I'm tracking. I went to Fort Leonard Wood. I did the rubber chip room. I did all of that. Right. So I started off as an enlisted engineer, and then I joined ROTC. And went out at Fort Cavazos. Used to be Fort Hood, and back then it was Tarleton State University. Now it's Texas A&M. And so I graduated out of that ROTC program, which was a great thing, right? Unlike most ROTC programs, full of college students trying to, this is E6 and E7s from Fort Hood, right? So my college experience was a little different. I had real platoon sergeants.
You had to wait to be a lieutenant to
right.
have a fun time.
Like, hey, who's this guy, right? And so it was interesting. It was great. And I joined the infantry, right? And I was very proud about it. So I came to Fort Benning, did my training. So a lot of the infantrymen that are in command right now, I remember them from IOBC before BOLIC.
Okay.
Right? We were in IOBC. And went out to Ranger School and Airborne School and did all the things that you knew you had to do as an infantryman. And then my first deployment was out to Fort Lewis, and we were in 2ID. At that time, Brigade Sergeant Major John Wayne Troxel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay, name drop. Good. It's a good one.
Sergeant Major Troxel was my brigade commander, and my company commander, which is an officer that probably has had the most profound impact on my military career, Captain Victor Saddlein at that time, but I think he's now the DC. I think he's the chief of staff for 10th Mountain now.
Oh wow,
he's doing really good.
Yeah, that's good.
Ranger Regiment guy, most of his career, and so he treated lieutenants like a mini Ranger Regiment, and that kind of spearheaded me in the route of understanding what's your standard. So we go to deploy out to. Baghdad at the time, Stryker Brigade, so we were QRF. We started off in Baghdad, and a few IEDs later, Purple Heart later, we find ourselves in Bakuba, come back, and hey man, it's time to go to Ranger Regiment or go SF, and Miss Jackson's like, hey Rambo,
I'm gonna dive us back a little bit.
Maybe you should take this. This branch detail, and maybe you shouldn't do this 4187. Some people, and I bring that up, right, because this is a common thing that happens to soldiers, right? Like, generally speaking, when people leave the military, if it's either, most of the time it's like maybe an injury did it, or, they had to make a career choice right?
Right.
And family usually comes up a
Yep.
lot, right? Hey, at this age, kids are in high school, right? So, do I want to go to senior service college? And in between the kids' junior and senior year, all these things
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
happening. Ironically for me, I had to make that life choice very early as a young lieutenant about to be captain. Do I stay infantry or do I go AG? And so I decided to go AG.
How did, I mean, that's a different mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as much as want to pretend like it's not, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's also the environment around you that's
Mm-hmm.
watching you make that decision,
Mm-hmm.
and people are proud combat arms officers
Yes.
for for good or bad, but
Yes.
mostly for good because they don't want to see good leaders go, right?
Right.
So what
So by the
right?
time I'm getting ready to leave infantry, Lieutenant Jackson, I already have an arrowhead device. I've done air
Mm-hmm.
assault in infantry. I'm already a Bronze Star recipient. I have an ARCOM with V, and I'm a Purple Heart recipient and a CIB. So Captain Sutherland was not wanting me to leave infantry.
Right.
Lieutenant Colonel Love, Rico Love, he was not wanting me to leave the infantry. Every mentor I had at the time was not wanting me to leave infantry. I wasn't wanting to leave infantry.
Fair.
But I love my family, and 25 years later, me and Demetra are still married.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a
Congratulations,
choice
sir.
that I made at a very early age, and I'm okay with that. Right. I can still do great things in whatever branch, and so that's
100%.
what I
Yeah.
had to learn. Can be inspired in any branch. Right. You know, everybody wants to be proud of their branch, but everybody in the Army has a purpose, and you can be great whatever the MOS is.
Yeah, no, that's I was not even close to as experienced as that when I made the switch, and I still had everybody telling me I was going to regret my decision.
Yeah, yeah,
and I tell people it's the best decision I ever made. So,
right.
so then what did you became an AG captain, obviously you had to go career course and all that stuff.
Yep.
But after that, what were your experiences leading you kind of in
Right.
between
So this is where I'm learning the AG branch. So yes, I leave Fort Lewis and I go to Fort Jackson. I go to the captain's career course, and like a guy that loves the infantry and don't want to leave the infantry, I found a way to get into a basic training company command.
Okay.
Right. And so I'm commanding Alpha Company 360th, Go Gators, right? And I'm loving it, right? I mean, I'm getting to go to the ranges. We're doing obstacle courses. I'm feeling like an infantryman still.
teaching new soldiers, yeah.
But Branch introduces me and like, hey, Captain Jackson, it's great that you are doing all this, command, but S1 is KD
Yeah.
for AG.
That's how they get you.
Hey,
That's how they get you.
if you don't go find a battalion S1, you're probably not going to make the next rank. And so at that time, Captain Sutherland had reached out to me about going to the Ranger Regiment, right? It's not that often that you got an AG
Right.
guy with a Ranger tab. And I was going to be the first S1 that they had out there that was actually tab qualified.
Yeah, right.
And so the way they traditionally do it at the Ranger Regiment is, maybe somebody's going to take command, they'll sit in that slot and they'll move. But hey, here's a guy that's AG qualified with a Ranger tab. It would be perfect. I go to RASP. I'll save you a long story, right? I got my side, they got their side. Didn't fail any of the physical fitness things, but apparently I need to brush up on my Ranger history.
Okay, that's fair.
So, everybody's got a Ranger story, right? And so I leave there. I've never not in my life executed a military school. So at this point, I'm upset.
Yep.
I'm going back to my command and I'm like, hey, I'm going AG all the way. I want to go in a post office, put me in a MEP station.
Yeah.
I want to be as AG as you can be because I was bitter, right?
Yeah.
And my branch commander at the time, Major Okendo, who was my captain's career course instructor, is like, come on, man, like,
Yeah.
you're a Ranger qualified airborne air assault AG guy. You're not going to any of those jobs. I got 82nd and I got 5th group. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
And I'm like, neither. He's like,
I told you.
Hey, 5th group it is.
Yeah.
So I go out to 5th Special Forces Group, and I think that saved me, right? Because I didn't want to be around that hardcore after leaving the Ranger Regiment. But I get out to 5th Special Forces Group, and it was the best time of my life.
Wow.
I was awarded a soldier's medal while I was out there, so
Wow.
the unit loved me. I was there when 4th Battalion was getting ready to transition from a line battalion to the, Jedbirds and all these things that they're doing now. And I was a part of the selection process on how that went. So I got to have a great impact in group, and they loved me.
That's awesome.
And so I left 5th Group, non-traditionally, like you do the traditional route. Nope, I went to West Point because I deployed with group twice, and while I was in the deployment, I received an email saying they're looking for instructors. I just put my name in the hat.
That's like the for a lot of people that don't know, that's like the Nigerian prince calling you. You're
Right.
like, was I supposed to get this email?
That's
Like,
what I'm like, yeah.
do they really? It says my name in the 2 line, but
Right.
an instructor? Like, no.
Exactly. I'm like, whatever. Like, come on, man. And I'm not a West Point graduate, right? And then traditionally,
on top of that,
me thinking of me, right? Sometimes we like to think highly of ourselves, but I definitely felt like I would be way out of my league going on to West Point, and I was deployed with 5th Group at the time. And so I called one day to see if they received my application from Iraq.
that's good.
And
Which
so,
you had to mail back then, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yep. And there was a person by the name of Colonel Woodruff there. He was answering the phone from a young lady named Bridget Bell that was on the 2 line. And he's like, hello, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm, calling to talk to Bridget Bell. And he's like, well, this is Colonel Woodruff. How can I help you? I said, well, sir, I sent her my packet to, be a potential candidate in the BSNL. He's like, well, hey, I'm doing the hiring. Let's do the interview right now. And did the interview on the spot.
Wow. Okay. I'm so prepared for this. I'm so glad.
I got the job. Yeah. And so I went out to West Point, and then it was another transformative experience for me. Probably one of the best experiences of my life. Definitely a crucible experience.
Yeah, maybe not the emotional highs and lows. I'm sure there were some in there, but just like the intensity highs and lows of I mean, not the basic training. It's very structured basic training command. Like you know what you're doing. I'm sure it's fun. You get to teach new soldiers coming in.
Correct.
But then you go straight to 5th Group, right? And
Correct.
that's huge. And then back down to
West
lower
Point.
intensity, but West Point, like again, a rewarding experience.
Yeah.
And then from West Point.
So from West Point, I go to CGSC. So while I'm at CGSC, it's like, hey, you got to go do another S1 job. I told you,
Yep.
At that time, my XO was a person by the name of Major Lindemann for 4th Battalion, who went on to be the group commander that just left 5th Group. And then my battalion commander was Colonel Ball and a person by the name of Colonel Locke, Lieutenant Colonel Locke, who is now Brigadier General Joe Locke, who's in charge of UCOM.
Oh, great.
So I had great leaders, right? And so when I was at CGSC, they're like, hey, Rod, you got to come back to the community. And so I ended up at 7 Special Forces Group.
That's awesome.
So there you go. I leave CGSC, I go to the Red Empire, and I'm just in this group community. And to be honest with you, all of my S1 time has been in SOF. And so I go to 7th Group, and it was a phenomenal job.
So that's very high caliber units there. Like you're talking about, like there's no, like everyone knows, like there's conventional Army, and then there's our special forces community, and we all try to train. We train the standard and we master the basics. Well, that like they do, like that's like what they're known for. And so when you're in that community and you talked about your time as like a lieutenant, where you really learned what standards were. Like that's where you
I contributed to Colonel Sutherland. He was a monster.
Right. And so now when you come into come to command a unit like this, like you're coming from a community where like standards and discipline are an extreme, and it's awesome, and it's they make movies about it. Like that's how awesome it is. But then now you're coming to a conventional force army, which is a STB at that. Like it's not, maybe not the most illustrious unit, like as far as like how the Army kind of views it. How do you like really like help them understand like this is how we need to operate? Like it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you're a cook, doesn't matter HR company. Like your standards are always up here. It's always excellence in it. Like how do you shift? I don't want to say you have to shift their mindset, but like how do you ensure like that those standards are being carried on?
There's 2 contributing factors. So prior to coming here, there was a job in between. It's during the COVID area, and I go to South Carolina State University as a APMS.
Okay.
The PMS retires, and they're like, hey, we're just going to make you the PMS. So then what's South Carolina State University? It's Lieutenant General Beagle's alma mater. And
Perfect.
he's the Fort Jackson post commander at the time,
yeah.
right? And I'm out there with his Bulldogs. But also during that time, you had Lieutenant General Bruce Crawford, who was G6 of the Army at the time. You had Brigadier General Twanda Young, who was the DCG of HRC. You had Lieutenant General Twitty, who was the USAREC DCG. And then you had General Turner, who was also Major General Turner, who was all those GOs. The schools produced 23 GOs.
That's wild.
And they were very interested in the Bulldogs.
Just especially when you were there.
I'm telling you, the reach back at that institution is amazing, right?
That's wild.
And their standard, leave a legacy, right? And so you talk about being in a job where maybe you're even feeling like, man, do I want to keep doing this? But every day you're with cadets that dreaming and wishing to be in your seat.
Right, yeah.
And you talk about being re-energized. Hey, sir, how was it being a lieutenant? What was the first conversation with your platoon sergeant like? Blah, blah, blah. And all those things you get to see every day when you come to work, and it re-energized me.
That's awesome.
So here I am now, right, at Fort Riley. And so how do you help these soldiers across the spectrum of jobs have standards? I say two things. One, I believe I'm very intrinsically motivated. And so I always actually ask my soldiers that, hey, sir, what do you think about this? Should we do that? I don't know. What's your standard? That's the question I ask them all. I don't know. You tell me, right? I know what I would do. What is your standard, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's like a game, right?
Now they know.
Yeah. Now it's like, I got it, sir. You would have did this. Well, watch what I do, right?
Right.
And
Heighten the standard, yeah.
However you get them there is great, right? But I will say, one, being intrinsically motivated. Two, where did it come from, right? So when I was a kid, right, my mom, single parent, raising me, hey, Rodney, did you do the dishes? Yes, ma'am. Hey, you left 2 cups in the living room, right? I hate a half-done job. Did you take the trash out? Yes, ma'am. Well, you left 3 cups in there.
Right.
I hate a half-done job, right? Hey, did you cut the grass? Yeah. Did you edge it and blow it? No. Right? I hate a half-done job, right? And so slowly but surely, that's inculcated in you, right? Like, it's never done, right? You can't do anything half done.
I'm so glad you said that. I was just literally, I had that example with my daughter yesterday, and I appreciate it. So thank you. I'm glad doing what your mom's doing to you.
Right.
Well, sir, thank you for coming out today. So, I mean, I think your stories are pretty remarkable as far as like the highs and lows of what you've been going through.
Yeah.
I think it shows, whether you're on the enlisted side or officer side, there are things that you can go do out in this Army.
Right.
Find the thing you want to do,
right.
Not necessarily the thing you think you have to do.
Right.
And so I really appreciate you sharing that story with us, especially, getting out your art, like you're literally basic training, West Point and RCC experience. Like that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And then in between that, awesome jobs that you're able to do. But then more importantly, what we touched on at the beginning of this, which is the kiosk is opening May 14th, grand opening.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm trying to remember, so, hate on me after this, but getting more dispersed locations out to the soldiers and getting them more opportunities and more options out there, which I think is, focusing on the soldier, I think is something that I think is maybe one of the more overlooked things that this command really does on this installation. And I'm not just trying to toot their horn. I've been in the rooms and I hear it, and so I think this is a great opportunity for soldiers, and I hope they take advantage of it. Yeah.
So I'll tell you one of the things that I've heard, at the groups, right? You get there and they always talk their soft truths and they always sing their song, right? Battle of Green Berets. But one of their soft truths that I really hold near and dear to my heart is humans are more precious than hardware. And when you really think about that, the soldiers is our most precious item. And so we are trying to ensure that they get the best services and best options available, right? And so we have to meet them where they are. And then, to your final question that you asked me, how do you find passion in what it is that you do? I'll just take me for an example, right? I love the infantry and I did not want to leave it, right? But, unfortunately in AG, one of our jobs is casualty assistance, right? So, if a soldier pays the ultimate sacrifice and my job was to have his DD-93 and his GOV right. Right, I owe that to him. Right, so everybody has one chance to be great. It may not always be on the front line, but that one time he needed me, I better be good.
Yeah.
So that's just the mindset that I take.
No, I understood. Well, thank you, sir. Like I said, I appreciate you coming out, and good luck in your next job too.
No, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. Right.
Thanks, sir.